How's it going, people? Good morning. We'll give people a minute or two to show up. And then we'll start. Why didn't I fix what yesterday? Bring up the T-pose man again. All right. Any comments on the package management topic? I mean, not really. Not really. Is the volume really that low? OBS says it's quite high. OBS says it's in the yellow, that it's like kind of dangerous. Yellow is close to red, which is the danger zone. Do we use C++ threads or do we have our own task manager? No, neither. We use operating system threads. We don't use C++ threads because that would be crazy. And we don't do our own task scheduler because I don't see the point in doing that. People can do that if they want to on their own. Game studios unionizing, good or no good? I don't know. I'm not super pro union these days. I think unions definitely had a place in history where they were necessary and good. But man, anytime I deal with a unionized industry now, it's terrible. Especially try going to a trade show and setting up a booth at like an expo hall, and you get super duper ripped off and you're not allowed to do anything yourself. You can't like bring in your own equipment because the union won't let you because they want to rip you off. It's like, it's the worst thing. You know, video game voice acting, working with the actual actors was always good. But working with the union was terrible. Like they have no incentive to talk to you or care about, you know, helping you get your game done, and they're just the roadblock to you getting your game done. And I had the two most frustrating times in video game voice acting for The Witness were both the voice actors union people just not caring enough to get back to me about what we needed in order to do things. So I can't say I'm a super big fan of unions in terms of my personal life experience. Yeah. How hard is it to make a custom Maya plugin for animation data? I think it's pretty easy. Maya, right? Like you can make a Maya plugin in Python, so it should be relatively easy. Do I think a Lisp without GC could work well? I don't understand what the point of such a language would be, because the syntax of Lisp is not good. So why do you want to keep that if you're not going to keep the data model of Lisp? I ate cake for breakfast, so I might have a sugar crash in the middle of this stream. How do I feel about Elon Musk preventing unionization of his workers? Well, I don't know what the actual story is there. I don't even know that that's an accurate description of what's going on because I basically can't believe anything I hear on the internet these days because so much of it is just a distortion. So the first thing to say is I don't actually know what's going on there, so I can't comment basically. C debugger recommendations? Well, the Visual Studio debugger is still the best one, sadly. What skills should you be gaining to get started in the game industry? Depends on what you do. If you're programming, you should be able to program games. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I think of when I hear that story is like we have a lot of laws about unions in the US. So like if he actually was union busting in some way, that's probably illegal and he would be in jail. So that's one reason I don't really believe what I've heard. There are a lot of laws about what you can and can't do with regard to worker organization in the US. So like if you heard about that on the internet, why are you repeating it? For Sokoban, is the event loop just a while true or something more sophisticated? I mean, it's a loop. What do you mean by the event loop? Like what? Do you mean the Windows handling loop or the game loop at a higher level? Like for animations input handling. Well, animations are not in the event loop. There's just, so at the high level, I'm looking for while loops. Here's our main loop. While 1, if we should quit the game, return. Otherwise, do some things. Actually, this one we don't even do right now. Do a frame. And then here's our do one frame. Apparently we have to fix this, and then I don't remember what needs to be fixed. It's probably been fixed. If it was that important, there's no way that it's not fixed yet. So yeah. So this loop is like, hey, handle resize kind of stuff, update what time it is in the game, do the game logic. Transition is like screen fades, so update that. Update the sound system. If we're in the editor, do something there. Make the cursor visible or invisible. Move the camera. These are just some objects in the world that we update. Draw the actual game view, and then do the post process, and then draw the 2D HUD over that. And then we draw the actual transition, which we updated earlier. I don't think those need to really be separate anymore. Then if someone's taking a screenshot, dump out the screenshot. If you're in developer mode, then draw this console that comes down over everything. Because it comes down over everything, we do it later. It's weird how the shadow snaps when the console is closing. What's that about? Are you guys seeing that? Or is that like some weird LCD persistence thing on my end? Anyway, that's what it looks like. It's really hot in my apartment, so let me try. How often do I switch between SF and Seattle? Never, because I left Seattle, because it's not good to live. Is my front door open? Well, how about if we do some programming now? Let me get a cold drink. Cold drink. Yeah, that shadow thing is pretty weird. I don't have an explanation for that offhand. Why the console would affect the shadows? It's a mystery. Okay. Last night, I undertook an investigation of why I was having this problem in the animation system. If you look at the dude, his arms are actually stretching and unstretching as he rotates just a little bit. And that's not good. And after some investigation, I discovered that the reason this is happening is because I am dumb and I'm doing a transformation, or I'm doing an initial animation interpolation in object space instead of node local space. And it's just the wrong thing to do, because you get much worse linear approximations of things in object space than you do in local space. So we have to fix that. It shouldn't be too hard to fix it enough to remove this artifact. And then the question is, how far do we push that into the system in terms of making it better? There's a weird red mark in the middle of the window. Yeah, so what's going on there is, let me do, so you can sort of see the guy like through the, mostly when his arm is going in like this way, you can see red there. That's like his feet, because we haven't, we have this shader to draw characters behind objects so that you can still sort of tell where your guy is when you're behind a big foreground obstacle. And it's not smart enough yet to ignore the character himself. So what you're seeing is like us drawing the feet as like, oh, you could see this guy now because he's behind something, but he's behind himself, right? So that is to be fixed a little bit later. Will using stencil buffers fix this? I mean, a stencil buffer is just like any other buffer these days, so it probably doesn't matter. Using a stencil buffer-like technique might be a thing. Will using blockchains fix this? Yes, by ensuring that your game never runs fast enough that anyone can play. Okay, so what we have to fix is the following thing here. First, we're calling getXFormState. And then we're saying get the local state relative to the parent. All right. So what we want to do, I guess, well, let's look at getXFormState. It actually gets a whole array of XForm states, puts them in this result called states. Really what we want to do is instead of evaluating them in object space, right, we can convert each one into local space and then interpolate. And then we can push this further. Like at first we can do the interpolation to local space here, and then later we can like push it up the tree, right? So let's just factor this into a procedure. So we'll say relative state is get relative state animation states it index, right? I think that's all that we need. And then get relative to parent actually, let's do this. I don't know which way to factor this. That's fine. Like that. What is this? So, well, let's just not make us, let's not even think about it. So we're going to pass the animation. We're going to pass the index and the states. What are these? Xform state. Okay. So we're going to say ainf, we're going to do this. And just paste all that. So we're going to say state is state sub index. It's not it index now, it's index. And we get rid of this because we're just doing by value. This routine doesn't necessarily have to be that fast right now. Because it's just a front end to this thing, right? And now instead of adding it to an array, we return it. Okay. Okay. Okay, so now we've turned this old loop into this. And we're not even using this variable state. We could just iterate over the indices. Undeclared identifier, get relative state. Oh. Okay, so now we should be still the same. Yep. We're still playing back animations. It still has the problem because we haven't actually changed anything yet. All right. So the next thing to do is to tweak get Xform state where well, does anyone else call get Xform state? Like, how much can I change this? It's only called in this file. All right. Well, we're going to pass so instead of this, we're going to go array resize. I don't know if that's how that works. Okay, apparently it is because we didn't complain about that. So now states relative to parent. Okay. Let's get rid of all our debugging code here that we don't need. Okay. Okay. So oh, you know what? This is, we don't need two arrays because we're not using that states as the source. So I'm just going to do this. Okay. So states it equals, what did we call it? Get relative state. Anim. It it's confusing because we have two indices. We have our node index and we have our sample index. We really should call this sample index. Right? It makes, on the one hand, it looks a little harder to read because there's a little more text, but actually, you might easily look at this and see the word index and go, oh, it's the node index or something, right? So we're getting the relative state from states, or node dot. Right? That's in the case where we're getting an endpoint. Otherwise, we do this. M0, M1 is get relative state. Now I'm confused. I'm still getting my indices crossed because this was sample index here, right? But this is node index. Okay. I think we might have a situation where the storage is different. Now I'm regretting eating all that sugar because my brain is confused. All right. Right, so I don't think I can do it this way. I did all this thing to wrap this up into this routine. And this routine is not actually the API that we want because the data is stored differently. Here, it's for every node, we have for every node, we have an array of frame data on that node. Whereas this one is like, if you've just got two arrays of sample data ordered by node index. So this kind of wants the opposite storage. So really what we just have to do is like unfold this into here, which is a pain in the butt. But it's fine, honestly. So, actually, we want to unfold it here. We want to get the relative state for sample index plus 0 here because we use that in both, and then we can get sample index plus 1 in here. Okay, so global of, I don't know what to call my variables. Node global is node.states light sample index. This is node index. So we're going to say, we're going to call M0, right? Not -1, dot dash dash dash, uninitialized. So we get the A info if A info.parent index is greater than or equal to 0, else M0 is node global, right? If we've got a parent index, then relative state is, or no, M0 is get, not colon, get relative to parent node global parent global. Let's call this child. Okay. So get relative to parent child global parent global. So parent global is node.states light A info.parent index. Maybe this would be more readable if we just folded it in. And if we change this to just node.states, because we don't need this to be called states light. There's no heavy states anymore. Anyway, so that in principle gives us M0. And here, there, and then this is just M1. Hope I don't mess this up too bad. Wait, what did this used to say? Yeah. M1. Yeah. So we're going to say child 1 global. Now this hasn't changed. And we'll get parent global again, even though this is redundant with what's up above. And then we say M1 is child 1 global, child 1 global, parent global. Okay. Will that work? I probably screwed something up. I mean, let's be honest. I almost screwed something up several times. Max sample index. Oh. Where did that? Oh, because I renamed index to sample index. All right. M1 X form stays blah. And then we don't need to dereference these anymore. Array bounds check failed. Oh, yeah. No. This is sample index. Okay. Parent node is node info, ainfo.parent index, right? And this is parent node sample index. I'm sure glad we had an array bounds check there. Okay, well, he's got the shakes. So that's not good. Wow, okay, we're doing something real bad. This is not what you want out of an animation system. This looks like what happens when you kill the horses in Scum. Yeah, this is pretty weird, right? Like, usually if you mess up animation, you just get everything crunched into the root node or something. You don't usually get something this entertaining. I feel like the only way for this to happen let me just review how I'm using the return data here. Okay, this is weird. Yeah, let's make sure we're not using this. Okay, well, that's not going to fix anything. This is pretty weird. It's like we're mixing up node index and sample index some more. Like, lower down in the hierarchy, he's turning less. Like down toward the stomach. And then he's turning more the further away you get. So like, yeah. That's all pretty interesting. So I need to rename these variables so that I'm less confused about them, right? So let's say, let's change this if just to reduce the amount of code, right? All right. So we'll do the same thing if parent node, then, oh, dude. This is supposed to be sample index +1. So yeah, yeah. That would be not what you want. Hey, look, he doesn't have the shakes. Hey, look, his arms are no longer stretching and contracting. How great is that? Effect ruined. Sorry, it was a pretty cool effect. I admit it. It was a cool effect. It was like Wolverine Simulator. Okay. Clones still don't animate. This clone in the upper right kind of gets a limp when I... Maybe they all kind of have a limp. So we have to deal with that. Would I ever consider rendering a reflected version of the world to display in the magic mirrors? I don't think so. And the reason is because if you're actually being accurate about that, the camera's above the scene the whole time, so you're only ever going to see a little bit of the ground. It's not going to be that interesting. You're going to pay a large cost in order to see a little bit of the ground at an oblique angle. Oh. Yeah, so this is good. I can check this in. And then we'll make it better. So now, instead of doing this this is not just every frame, right? It's every sample for every frame. So we're doing this relative to parent situation 2 times 140 times per character per frame, or however many bones they have, right? Times 2. So in a scene with 5 characters, we might be doing this 2,000 times a frame. which is not that much, but yeah, no, we want to do less than that. So my next step is just going to be to do this conversion at load time instead of here. And I'm going to do some renaming. So I'm just going to call this states instead of states light, because that's a historical name, I think. So yeah. There used to be a heavy state, and we don't have that anymore. Haven't had that in like a long time. So we're just going to rename this. And now that there's no longer an array called states, well, maybe there will be again. Maybe I'll rename states relative parent to states, but I could call it states by node or something. The thing is, these two arrays have different storage, so naming them exactly the same is a little bit not what you want. Okay. So let's make an if-def. We'll say pre-transform to relative is true. So we're going to say if pre-transform to relative, else we do what we're doing now. And the pre-transformed to relative version of this is just going to be M0 is node.state sample index, right? How did this go before? I feel like we didn't have the parent computation in here. Or no, okay, obviously we don't, right? So this is just M1 is this, and then that, right? So this is what we want to get to. Do you want to see something entertaining? Let's see what happens. This is going to be another messed up thing because we're playing them back as if they were global, but they're relative. So this is going to be a giant mess. It's going to be some Hellraiser situation. Oh. Let's try levels where guys are smaller. Yeah. Oh yeah. This is what happens when you really mess up your animation system. At least we don't have any triangles going to infinity. That's always fun. They're all like in... Oh, we're not. Okay, in the editor, we're not actually playing the animation. Okay. So we want to get to the point where this is turned back into this, right? Looking at this, you can imagine how that's faster than that, especially as this calls some other procedures, right? Okay. So we don't need this anymore, right? Nobody calls that. And this we're going to put here just because, oops, that's what we need. Oh no. This is going to mess up our foot matching. I hadn't thought about this. I have to redo foot matching today. Because, you know, so what happens a lot of the time is you play some animation and then you're like, hey, let's segue into this next animation. And you want to figure out where in that animation to play from. You can match the positions of the hands and feet. Well, since our animations used to be in object space, then you used to just be able to look at the node translations to figure out where things are. And now we have to fix that because those have to be multiplied into object space. What a pain. But we're not going to do that yet because right now we just need to handle this. So load, where do we load? Here's where we load. So we load each node one at a time. Now let's just look at the file. Each keyframe is one sample per node. So here, we do it here. All right. So if we pre-transformed a relative, we do some stuff, else we do other stuff. So we read into a child, we get the parent. Your parent node is always guaranteed to have a lower index than you. So we know the parent node is loaded. So, well, let's go back to so we get the parent index. If parent index is greater than or equal to 0, else, oh no. So the problem is we can't do this in order from left to right because we'll have destroyed the parent node data when we want to use it for the child nodes. So we actually have to read the whole thing. And then maybe we go right to left. Change the file format to be relative, bro. Okay. So if we're pre-transforming to relative, then actually let's put this out here. So we read these. These are all in object space, no matter what. Then we iterate in the reverse order over this stuff. And instead of read X form state, well, we say child is okay, so parent index is a info.parent index. Not that much worth putting its own variable, but whatever. A info.states sample index. Parent, if parent index is greater than or equal to 0, index anim dot a info dot state sample index equals get relative to parent, get relative to parent, child parent. So now we're doing it right to left. So go right to left so that we do children before parents. Okay. Probably messed it up. Yep. This looks the same as before. Why? It doesn't look any different. I don't understand why that wouldn't do anything. Oh God. I think we're taking a copy of this entire struct by value and then writing into the value copy and throwing it away. Nope. Nope. So weird. Oh, it wouldn't matter because the array So that's what I thought. We never actually run this code for some reason. Pre-transformed a relative is true. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, okay, now I've got my indices crossed. I've got a bone index where I've got an animation index. But, yeah, when you... Yeah, I forgot to reverse the order of my guys. Okay. It's debatable about whether this should be this way or the other way in general language semantics, but for now it's that way. Okay, so line 240, we can take out our print statements because those aren't going to be necessary. Parent in, oh, yeah, no, this is sample index for both of these, but we're going to say pinfo is anim.node info parent index. It's so easy to get confused when you're programming. I don't know why. It just is. Look, this is an actual human, sort of. It's an actual human. Yeah, see how it's super jumpy right now when he starts moving? It's because the foot matching is all frickin' hosed. So we have to fix that. We have to fix the foot matching. All right. Well, let's just say, since we got this working, that's that. This all goes away. And there we go, right? Oh. You always know it's been successful when your code did its job and therefore you get to delete it. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if it's only the foot matching that's causing that teleport right there, but it may be. Maybe. Okay. We might want to do foot positions here while we have everything global, because otherwise it could get very expensive. Let's think about this. First, I have to send an email. I'm just getting bombarded by emails that I don't want. Don't want any of your people's emails. Anyway, so we've had good success here. Oh, I gotta tell. Okay. Ah, my tea's cold. My hot tea is cold. Okay, so let's look at our footstep situation. Find closest matching time. I don't know what relative to name means. Let me see who calls this. Left bone, right bone, base. Okay, so right, we're matching 2 feet or 2 arms if we want to use them for arms. Right now it's always just ankle bones relative to the root bone. So this is a pain to do on the, like, not at loading time, because if we've only got our animation data in relative space now, then, you know, to get the translation relative to some other node that's far away, you have to basically, essentially, you've got to compute the object space of everybody. It's not great. speed-wise, because you have to do it for every sample in the animation, because the point is you're finding a time within that animation, right? So it's not awesome. It's not awesome. So really what I want to do is for every animation, I want to just have the foot positions. We're just going to do that on load for now. I guess that's something that we could save in the animation file as well. But we just get the foot positions relative to the root. You know what I'm saying. And we'll just hard code it for the feet for now. And if we need to expand on that, we'll expand on that. Have two sets of data, everything in relative and foot and hand in object. Well, yeah, it's just we don't. That would be a straightforward expansion of what we're about to do, because the question is, you could answer the question of how much data do I need to save to do pose matching? And if it's very sophisticated pose matching, you might want to save all kinds of things, right? But it's probably not the raw animation data most of the time. I don't know. Like here, we're just saving translations. So let's just start butchering this. This is all the same. So first of all, this averaging is not useful, right? Almost all of this procedure remains the same. The only thing that we really need to do okay. Actually, what I just said is not true. Like, as we play back the animation, either we want to interpolate the foot positions. Like, there's two things you could do. You could take your guy and say, we're going to extract the current foot positions from the object space, which actually we have because you need the object space to render, right? Or you could maintain foot positions in a totally different situation. Yeah. Okay. I'm just rambling at this point. Anyway, these are still in object space because these are the states that happen after we've concatenated everything back together. So these are still in object space. These are not. So yeah, really all we have to do is what I was saying. We just have to have the footsteps pre-computed on the animation. So what we would do is just say T0 is animation.footstep pause left, foot pause left of I, right? And T1 is, or, what am I doing? T0, T1, these are translations. So T right, usually T means time. So we have these foot positions. And then we take the distance there, okay? So we need to make those. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Now, when we load, before we convert to relative, okay. So now some animations will not have corresponding node indices. Yeah. Okay. Because we load animations for more than human characters as well. What a pain in the butt. All right. So here, okay, we fill out the node info. All right. So we need find node anim left foot name, right? Node right foot is find node right foot name. Node feet relative to feet relative to name. So why are we making those constants? Well, those are going to be these, so that we use the same frickin' things. And then here, okay. Because now we have two parts of the code that are pretty far apart that are both using these names. So we get the right foot, the left foot, the feet relative to. Okay. So if node left foot and node right foot and node feet relative to, then we do some things, right? We do this. So let's say x0, x left is node left foot dot states sample index. All right, is that right? Something like that. I don't know if that's right, but anyway. Okay, so we get these two translations, and then we say, well, foot pause left sub sample index is to the left. You dig? You dig? Okay. How much did I screw up there? Well, it compiles. I don't know what that means. Well, we crashed. Oh, because we never assign. We did all this stuff where we make these arrays, and we never actually assign them to the animation. All right, well, he looks kind of jumpy sometimes still, but I don't know, man. This doesn't look right at all. Let's see what... here we go. Are we in the wrong HUD? Yes, we're in the wrong HUD. I'm looking for game report. Okay, so if I match well, we're getting different times in the animation. Like a good sign that it's not working is that you don't get different times in the animation. Now what we really want to do is maybe match into the middle of that, but I don't know. These still look suspicious to me. See that? I don't know. Wait, what's our distance being reported? That seems like a reasonable distance, 1/10 of a meter. Well, it gets high sometimes. Well, it actually doesn't look bad. Oh, that was bad though. What's going on with these blends? Is the blend time turned way down, or? That was big. So he was going to idle. So if I'm there, Okay, hold on. How do I make this happen consistently? Now it's just not happening consistently. That was, okay, so I was right, going to idle, down. Didn't do it that time. Did it that time. It's when the matching is 0. It's like if the matching time is 0, then we snap. Seems weird. Or if it's low, if it's 0.06. That's like a different problem. Wait, that time? I don't know what's going on there. Let me just check this in because it does seem better, but not done. If the model is not at rest and key is pressed, dist is less than 0.43. Use the next floor's position. What are you talking about, use the next floor's position? I have no idea what you mean. Could I somehow get California to build more houses? I wish. That is the number one thing California needs to do. Unfortunately, it's not happening. Dist is the position of model when you press key. You should use position of floor. No, dist is not position of model when I press key. That is not remotely what that is, unless there's a horrible, horrible bug. Although that said, a distance of 0.4, I mean, that's the sum of total distance between the 2 feet. Like a distance of 0.4 is 0.2 for each foot, which seems like a lot. But that's not the problem I'm even looking at. The problem I'm looking at is this discontinuous jump that happens there. Like we're supposed to be smoothly blending. What the hell? See, the problem is, I don't know if there's something in the animation graph that's not controlled by me that is causing this. I hope not. Okay. There's fucking blend 0.0s in here. All right. I'm writing an email right now, and I'm saying I fixed, hopefully, the foot matching, and then was noticing that characters are discontinuously popping between poses all the time, and it looks really bad. After being confused for a while, I thought to look in human.animation graph, and well, there are a bunch of blend 0.0 times in there, when switching between different states. A blend of 0 is guaranteed to look like teleporty crap, and we do not want to ship a game that does that. What's the motivation behind this? There sure are a whole lot of them. All right. It's very hard to be nice writing emails sometimes. It's definitely a problem that I have. Yeah, I don't know. It's quite likely that this was added for some perceived reason. You know, like you don't just type that for no reason. We'll have the conversation first, because it's not going to tell me that much if I look at the history of when these changes were made, because that doesn't tell me why and so forth. Yeah, blend time of 0 just means snap to that. Oh, I will say, oh, did this have to do with trying to deal with the turning thing? We totally do not want to do anything like this. It's not the right way to try to handle this problem. Though that said, blending is going to mess with turning. No matter what. So if turning compensation built into the animation is really what we want to do, we need to do it in some way where a base turn node is marked not to blend, which seems unworkable. Maybe I am not thinking about it properly, but um, It seems likely that we will want to do this in a less hacky way if we want a good result. All right. Well, yeah, exactly. The only situation you would actually want 0 is under the very precise condition that you're playing a next animation that continues from the previous one. Yeah. Well, do I do anything else or do I finish having breakfast and then go to work? Kind of feel like I'm done with this little effort. Like, we did what we set out to do. We fixed the animation bug. Oh. I hope I didn't check in that matching time situation. I don't think I did. Whoops. I did. Whoops. No. This one. Okay. I think it's breakfast time, which is kind of like Miller time for the morning. Disable matching time display. By go to work, do you mean go to the office and do what you're doing here? Kind of, yeah. I didn't do what you set out to watch. What did you set out to watch? Surprise release of... No surprise release today. People are pasting all sorts of stuff into the luxury lounge. Can't I stream at the office? I could, but it would be very disruptive to everybody else while I'm sitting there blabbing. Yeah, I mean, the thing about engine stuff is it tends to be more visual, right? Like today you could see the animations and you could see the output, or, you see a visual representation of what we're doing, so it's probably a little bit easier to follow along, maybe. Factorio from the office. No. What industry would I work in if not games? 5/7 of your team left last week, so looking around. Huh. Sounds like an indie project disintegrated if it's 7-people team. I don't know. Like, I would be trying to do something that I found meaningful. So like maybe like physics, some kind of simulation programming, maybe energy, some kind of like energy project situation, maybe. I don't know. There's all sorts of things. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. You program for 12 hours daily and feel like life is coming aside. I don't know what that means exactly, but I assume you mean that life is like going by while you sit there and program. Though you work on an important project, what would I suggest? Well, if you really feel like you're missing something, then you do want to take a little bit of time at least and do life things, because if you don't, that feeling will build up until it turns into burnout and you won't be able to program anymore. So you want to make sure you don't feel like you're depriving yourself when you program. You want to program because you enjoy it and because you're getting good things done. And it's okay to take a break to do other stuff once in a while. So as much as it takes a great deal of effort to get things done when you're programming things that are significant, a trap that a lot of people fall into is they work a lot of hours and they work themselves into a mindset where they're always, their mind is always distracting them, trying to get them to not work so hard and stuff. And then you feel like you're working 12 hours a day, but they're very inefficient hours. Like working at 20% efficiency for 12 hours a day is obviously not that great of a situation, because not only do you not have spare time, but you're still not actually getting that much done. Now, here's the thing. Most programmers, 20% is even a high number. Most programmers are working at a very low level of efficiency, by which I mean, how much would they get done compared to if they just sat down and focused the whole time for 8 hours or however many hours and only took breaks for lunch or like 15 minutes for coffee or to go to the bathroom or something, right? Call that 100% if you were fully focused and just really working. I am very productive compared to most programmers. I don't even work at 50% most of the time, right? Um, so therefore, I'm pretty convinced that most programmers uh, have they're working below 10%. Like that's the only explanation that's possible. Um, I mean, maybe there's explanations like, okay, if you get more confused by making bugs, you could get stuck for a lot longer on bugs and things. I don't know. But I know there are people my age uh, who have as much experience debugging, for example. Like one thing happened today where like we got a crash and I was like, oh, I know why, because I forgot to do this one thing. I didn't have to go debug it. Like I knew as soon as there was a problem what the problem is. And that's a skill that you just get from programming a lot. But a lot of people have that skill and they still don't produce very much, right? So I think it's just people don't work most of the time. Why don't they work most of the time? Because they don't really want to. Why don't they really want to? Because they don't really feel like deep down, they don't really feel like it's the best thing for their life. So, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to say about all of that, except that it's not a good situation. So usually I program at less than 50% efficiency. I have in rare occasions, very rare occasions, programmed over 100%. And what I mean by over 100% is so much energy is going into it that it's obviously unsustainable for durations longer than a week or 2 weeks. So there have been some times when I go for 7 days or 10 days when I'm working at 110% for like 12 hours. I can't do that for very long. But usually I don't work anywhere near 100%. Even like when I'm doing these streams, it seems like I'm getting stuff done, but if I stream, I'm automatically probably at 65% or below, just because streaming while programming occupies a certain part of your brain. So, anyway, you want to make sure. So I guess the reason I'm saying all that is that if you are spending a lot of hours programming, you want to make sure you're really programming and not just kind of half messing around and half programming. Because if you are doing that, you'll be a lot happier in life if you can mess around less and have more time, right? That's important. Can I elaborate why I'm not at 50%? It's just, you have to want to be over 50%. And we all have psychologies that want us to be doing other things, myself included. So, 50% is not really a low efficiency compared to what a lot of people work at, right? But I just know that I can go a lot faster and more consistently, right? I don't have to stop and take a break every 20 minutes and check my email, right? But I do a lot of the time. Or check, let me go watch a little YouTube clip for 5 minutes to rest my brain. Like, you don't need to do that. But if you do that, if you watch a 5-minute clip and then get some tea or something every hour, we all know watching a 5-minute clip doesn't really take 5 minutes. Like that'll easily put you at 50% before you even start talking about how effectively you're focusing on a problem, because the level of focus that you have has a lot of bearing on efficiency as well. I don't know. I'm not explaining this very well right now, but, Yeah, you couldn't work for an employer anymore, so you quit and work for yourself. It makes you really productive because you do what you want to do. You often turn off your phone and email and work. Yeah, that is a good way to be productive. I had a similar thing where when I worked for employers, I could be excited for a certain amount of time and then the excitement would run out and then I would be a really crappy employee, like who wouldn't get things done and it would be terrible. So um, for me as well, I had to work on my own things to be productive. Maybe I could be productive on other people's stuff now because I understand why a work ethic is important more than I used to, but I wouldn't I wouldn't have too much faith in that because that's an intellectual understanding and some drives are much deeper than that. You're pretty sure that the difference between most programmers that work 10 to 20% efficiency and 50% plus is how involved you are with the problems you're solving. Yeah, totally. And the thing is, though, that involvement, if I was saying focus, it's sort of the same thing. Um, it changes from day to day, right? Because, like, I chose these projects. These are the things I wanted to work on more than anything else. But when you work on something for 2 years or 4 years, some days you get up and you're like, you're just less in there. And some days you get up and you're more in there, right? And so part of it is you got to really capture the days. If you're really motivated and you really want to jump in and do it, then just make sure that habits of distraction don't get in the way of that time. Because when you're motivated, you'll be several times more productive than when you're not motivated. And so if you maximize the times when you are motivated in terms of like how you use your time on those days, then that's the majority. That's the biggest step you can take actually in increasing productivity, because you kind of can't that much control in the short term when you're not motivated what happens. In the long term you can. There are mental techniques that you can use, but in the short term, some days you're just not going to do that well. I started out, it was too hot in here, now it's too cold in here. If you want efficiency boost, 4Coder soon will have a very hype, cool version, and it will be a good time to finally bite the bullet. Yeah, efficiency boosts like that, though, tend to be small. They tend to, they're useful. Like sometimes I get annoyed at Emacs, and it takes me longer to do stuff than I should, and things like that. But the major factors in how productive you are is just your focus and your attitude and your mood. And other factors like, is your brain cloudy because you couldn't sleep well enough or not? That's actually huge. I mean, that's related to motivation, I think, because it's hard to be super motivated if you're tired and what you really need is sleep. Do I use any nootropics? No, I don't really see any evidence that those do anything. Like why, intelligence is so important in, or not even intelligence, but like mental reaction time, right? Or whatever, things nootropics are supposed to improve. Let's put that into a blanket category, right? Those things are so important that back in the hunter-gatherer days, it would have meant everything to optimize those. And so why would your brain rely on some weird chemical that's hard to get in order to problem solve well, or in order to react to like getting charged by an animal quickly or something, right? Like that's not really, it doesn't make sense. It would be optimized for doing those things well under the diet that you have daily, right? It's just kind of how biology works. So you're just mentioning that difference because I seem to be dissing the 10 to 20% programmers without taking into consideration how the number gets that low. I don't see your previous comment. Oh, this is the involved thing. Well, yeah, I mean, no, I'm definitely taking into consideration how the number gets that low. I'm not really dissing the 10 to 20% programmers. Like I have friends who are 10 to 20% programmers for sure. Or 10 to 20% of what they are capable of. Most programmers, okay, let's get this straight first of all. My whole point is that almost no programmers work higher than 10 to 20% of what they're actually capable of. Like that's clear. So I'm not saying that exactly as a blanket diss. I'm just saying it's a widespread problem, right? The world of programming would be tremendously better if people managed to solve this problem because you would get much more productive, right? So that's all that I'm saying. I'm not trying to brag. I'm not trying to say some programmers suck or whatever, because this is a little bit orthogonal to programming skill, right? Is how you can be a good programmer, but not that productive usually. That said, there is a correlation. The correlation is the more productive you are generally, the easier it is to learn because you get more experience to learn from. So you increase your skill more over time if you're more productive. But they're separate variables, right? When you went vegan, it made you more productive because you're not sleepy and your energy levels are more stable. Yeah, that could be. I tried going vegan, it wasn't working for me, but if that works for you, then good deal. Have I read The Blank Slate? No. Personally, you find you have very little memory space. You could not remember even a phone number for 15 minutes. I don't know. That kind of issue. Like memorization of numbers is a thing that I think some people are better at because, I don't know, for a lot of factors. But I don't know how important that is for programming. Maybe sometimes. Maybe it's one of the skills that feeds into programming. Would I consider myself a 10x programmer? That's not a blanket term the way that people use it, right? Because again, so here's the thing. As I often rant, the productivity in terms of actual output over time of web programmers today is very low, right? And again, all you have to see that is divide the improvement in functionality of the website by the number of engineers, right? And times the number of days that they work or whatever. The amount of work that gets done in a web company is almost zero. So a random programmer from 1990, an average programmer from 1990, is a 10x programmer compared to the average web programmer today. That's just fact. So, but that's not what people mean when they say 10x programmer, I don't think. I mean, it's all relative, right? So I definitely have days. I definitely have had individual work periods that are 10x my average from other times, right? So sometimes when I'm not that motivated, I probably work at 10% of my own capacity, right? And sometimes I work at 100% of my own capacity, and that's 10x right there. And 10x is a lot. So, um, you know, but at the same time, you see there's all these people on Hacker News going like, 10x programmers don't exist or whatever, and that's denial, right? Like most programmers are so inefficient, it's pretty easy to do 10x of what actually gets done. The more people working around you, the more productive you are yourself. You're very bad at working from home. Have I experienced this? No, I actually get less productive when there's lots of people around, but that might have to do with my actual role, right? Because I run the company. Usually, if people are around, they want to stop and ask me things, and that'll take me out of whatever problem I'm doing. So, can I mention which features I accomplished during my 110% periods? No, they are mostly secret projects that you haven't been announced. Definitely, I was working when I did the speed run in The Witness, the initial version of that. I was working at a high productivity for a week, but it was probably like 75% or 80%. It wasn't 100. Although I don't remember that way. It might have been higher. I don't remember it that well. After watching How to Program Independent Games, your productivity skyrocketed. I don't remember what I said in that talk. Oh wait, that's the CSUA one maybe. Is that the one from like 2011 or something? Anyway. Do I have any tips on concentration if one has tinnitus or tinnitus, however you want to pronounce that? I have very mild tinnitus, but it doesn't affect my concentration. So I don't really know what to say if you have that enough to bother you. I have no experience in that territory. Why don't I pair program with Casey and then with the efficiency boost we both can crank out Handmade Hero and all this stuff? Because pair programming is an efficiency hit, not a boost. How productive are programmers at the company? It varies. Everybody has a different productivity level. Everybody varies from day to day. People work on harder things. They work on easier things. I don't know that I can generalize. So someone is saying, what is productivity for a 10x programmer? If it's just cranking out sloppy code, then I disagree with the term productivity. Well, I would disagree with that too. But no, when people talk about 10x productivity, they're talking about this person can make finished shippable code 10x faster than this other person. And that definitely happens all the time. I mean, it's more than that, right? There exists, as problems get more complex, some people are 100x more productive. Some people are infinity more productive in the sense that like some programmers can solve problems that other programmers just could never solve given an infinite amount of time. Well, at their current, like given an infinite amount of time, you can improve yourself and change your techniques and get better at what you do, right? So that's a little bit weird of a concept, but like if you were to take what you do today and extrapolate that for infinity days, we all have some threshold of problem that we wouldn't be able to solve, right? For some programmers, that threshold is higher than others. And so, yeah, there's some problem size that's infinity X between one programmer and another. So You feel like pair programming is a boost if you are learning, but a hit otherwise. Yeah, there's something like that. Like if you're learning, it may help to talk it out with people, but for production programming, it doesn't make sense. Would I ever return and make that mech game we were working on for PS3? That wasn't Wolfram. That was a different game, and I don't think I would do that anytime soon. Not that game. Maybe something totally different. How would I solve it if I only come up with ideas that are way too big to get it done? I would learn how to come up with more tractable ideas. That's a very important skill. It's very easy to imagine amazing mega games. The thing is, it's hard to make games. So if you got to imagine things that are more tractable than amazing mega games. Otherwise, you'll never be able to do them. Any genre I think is intrinsically more fun to program. I don't know. I think it depends on your personal temperament. Like games that have a lot of procedural generation could be fun to program because you're like programming the actual geometry of the world and stuff. But then, you know, if you're doing shader programming on a regular game, you're changing the way the world looks too in a very obvious way. So I'm not sure that it matters that much. Do I have a non-puzzle game idea I want to do? Yes, several. How to program independent games is CSUA one from 2011. Has spread quite far and it used to have an array of records. Because having a base state, yeah. I remember which one you're talking about for sure. It's hard to believe that's 2011. It's a long time ago now. I used to think of that as one of my more recent talks, and now it is not one of my more recent talks. Does streaming while I program interfere with my creative process? Yeah, it's hard to be creative while streaming. It's very hard. Yep, those are good notes of that speech, and I would still generally say the same things. All right, I think it's time for me to go to work. Thanks everybody for stopping by. Let's find someone to kick the stream over to.
Hard as we can.
Not Pokemon. Programming. Not JavaScript, man. He seems to have a lot of viewers, I guess because he streams daily for a long time. We could do epilepsy warning, but we're trying to spread it around. So let's see what else is out there. Tangle Deep expansion dungeons. The Joy of Coding, episode 148. What is that?
Oh, now a different Firefox is starting up. It's probably the one we just launched over here. So I guess we'll let that try and do its thing. In the meantime, session storage is this.
Some web browser situation. That's a possibility. Hey, it's Jeff. I don't know. What do we think? What looks good to people? Why do I refuse to host JavaScript? I know it's a terrible language, but you don't have a choice on the web. Yes, I do. I have a choice about whether I host JavaScript or not, and my choice is not to host JavaScript. We got one vote for Jessica Mack. It's the only vote that I see so far. We also have that vote in the luxury lounge. All right. It's epilepsy warning. So really, this game is really visually impressive. So it makes a good host. All right. See you all later. Yeah, we could host Senior Software Engineer in Action, but let's not do that. See you guys later. Thanks for stopping by.